With YouTube attacking alternative media, please consider supporting the channel via Patreon for just $1 per month. Link below. So jumping over here into another story that I just find to be utterly fascinating is the Netflix discussion about possibly picking up Cloverfield 3 or God Particle or Cloverfield Station from Paramount and publishing it on Netflix. This has got a lot of fans absolutely freaking out over this, mostly because they want to see it. This is like a guaranteed way of seeing it, and Paramount has repeatedly pushed back the release date of God Particle, and I don't quite know why, to be honest with you. I don't quite understand why they keep pushing it back. But then again, Paramount hasn't really been having the best of times recently, and they're probably like not wanting it to be operating at a loss. So they're thinking of the best time to make it come out that it might be good. They're talking now April, right? April, right before the release of Avengers Infinity War, just getting in right before summer season when it all goes completely crazy with Avengers and then Solo and Deadpool and all those other movies. They're probably wanting to get it in around that time when they still have a shot at making some money. And of course, January would be a good time. This month would have been good. February's bogged down by Black Panther. And March is going to have its set of releases too. So yeah, April makes some sense. It does. But it says here that Netflix is in talk to acquire God Particle from Paramount, the studio that made the latest thriller from J.J. Abrams' Cloverfield movie series. Sources say it's unclear if a deal makes, but if the ink does dry, it will come on the heels of Paramount's December deal with Netflix, which had unloaded the new Alex Garland-directed movie Annihilation on the digital streamer, which picked up all international territories except domestic from the studio. Paramount was set to release Particle on April 20th. So this actually makes sense from a worldwide perspective. I was listening to the John Campea podcast earlier today, and he did talk about this too, which my thoughts on it were the exact same thing. And this has kind of been backed up a little bit, if you go over to the Cloverfield subreddit, they have talked about the release of God Particle onto different in other territories, and it's being put out there by Netflix. I don't know how true or real that is, but that's the floating around right now. And if they just want to focus on the domestic earnings for God Particle, they'll release it in theaters and therefore release the film in other countries, through Netflix. And they've done this before. I mean, with Annihilation, it makes sense. Paramount wants to make money. They realize that the domestic market is obviously the number one for this, and they want to clearly try and capitalize, on that, while basically taking the money from the international market that may not pay out. And Netflix, if anything, is a sure deal. It is. If anything, it's an absolute sure deal to make money, to recoup some of your costs, and then they'll gamble on the domestic, wait a few months, and then drop it to Netflix themselves. And that being said, too, those of people, I should say, who like to sail the high seas on the internet, that was not a Freudian slip, they'll be able to get their hands on the movie through a 1080p rip as soon as it drops in other countries. Similar accidents have happened with The Hitman's Bodyguard, by the way. Anyway, so the culling of Paramount's release slate is being spearheaded by Chairman Jim Giannopoulos. Sources tell The Hollywood Reporter that Giannopoulos took over reins in spring 2017, watching the movies he had inherited and making some hard choices. He sat down and looked at what is theatrical and what is not in this day and age, says one source. Certain movies were not making the cut. And ultimately, as awesome and amazing as the Cloverfield franchise is, and it is, I love it. I can see that argument being made. Does Cloverfield need to be seen on the big screen? One of the major complaints about Cloverfield was the shaky cam, and that was a hard thing to watch on the big screen. I'll just tell you this. I saw the movie 6 times opening weekend. I can't even tell you how many times in total I saw the movie in theaters when I worked at my theater. So I saw it for free, which is part of that 6 times, 4 of those 6 times. And then I paid to go see it at other theaters 3 other times. So I saw it a bunch of times on the big screen, never impacted me, but I can see how that could impact other people. And that could be something that they thought about in regards to this. The shaky cam is what people remember the most about Cloverfield. Even though 10 Cloverfield Lane is a good movie, people are still going to associate Cloverfield with the shaky cam, and that could, I don't know how true this is, but that to me feels like maybe an argument there. Never mind the fact that they just don't know how to market God Particle, because if the movie is 3 months away from coming out, we have no poster, we have no trailer, we have no promotional photos, we have no behind the scenes photos. There's nothing in regards to marketing of this movie. So Yeah, I can understand that. He's making some hard choices. Paramount has produced and released the two previous Cloverfield movies to great profitability. The movies took unique perspectives on what was traditionally big-budget movies. Cloverfield, released in 2008, directed by Matt Reeves, was a found-footage monster movie made for $25 million that grossed $80 million domestically. 10 Cloverfield Lane was an alien invasion movie that cost even less and made $72 million domestically. So yes, compared to the price of entry for what these films cost, I believe the opening weekend totals for Cloverfield in 2008 was $30 million, so effectively earning back its production budget in that weekend, as well as going on to do the $80 million domestically, of which I spent, I contributed to that multiple times over. Every time I paid to go see it in the theater, I paid for somebody else. So yeah, I'm a fan. I've talked about that before though. So that's ultimately the way that I see it, is like they're looking to, you know, they know the franchise has profitability to it. They know that there's a fan base around it, but it's probably just domestically, and that's where they want to put it. And another thing I want to kind of quickly say here, because I mentioned I was listening to John Campea earlier. Campea overlooked the fact that these films had lower budgets and were profitable for the studio, right? Like, he really overlooked that. And that's another thing too, is people overlook the profitability of the Cloverfield franchise. They do. They just want to go, oh, it's just the monster movie. It's a fucking profitable monster movie. Damn it. I'm defensive. Anyway, it says a particle, which is otherwise known as Cloverfield Station, seems to eschew the model from the get-go. The budget was in the over $40 million range. The cast was more established and bloated. And yeah, it's got a lot of people there. Sources say the movie needed some work, while Abrams expressed an intent to get down to business in post-production. It was too little too late. Several sources suggested that Abrams' attention may have been taken by his unexpected new assignment, the final installment of the Star Wars Skywalker episodes, which he signed on in September. Yeah, that makes some sense. Now, again, there are rumors circulating around with this right now that suggest that this is in fact going to be the this is going to be like a thing, like where Netflix is currently in talks to acquire the rights to Cloverfield, and ultimately, yes, that's what I want. I fully admit that. If Cloverfield through Bad Robot can go from Paramount to Netflix and work with them directly, then I believe that we will be able to get the anthology series that this is meant to be. I think we can finally get all of the films, get the full complete story, because as more emerges, as time goes on, these movies feel like they might actually be more connected than not. And in terms of a straight timeline of events, depending. I've heard some interesting theories about God Particle in terms of time travel, but we won't know until we see it, and we won't know until we dive into the ARG that's been presented before us. But to kind of wrap this whole thing up, I want this to happen. I want Netflix to take it, because they care about this kind of stuff. They care about the creative process and the allowing of creators to be able to do that. To actually go and tell these stories and do these things without oversight, the type of over-executive oversight, the type of too many notes sort of things. And I think Cloverfield, with that kind of freedom, would not only give J.J. Abrams what he wants, it would be a very, very big and good thing for Netflix.